Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this webinar to understand the MOR-EV rebate program in Massachusetts and all the stackable electric car incentives. My name is Anna Vanderspeck. I'm the Electric Vehicle Program Director at Green Energy Consumers Alliance. I will be the person giving this presentation today, but I will let my colleague introduce herself so you get to know her as well.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Rodriguez. I'm the Drive Green intern for the summer and also the fall. Thank you all for coming and welcome.
Caitlin will be in the chat, so if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to write them into the Q&A function that you should see on your Zoom screen. Caitlin will respond to questions in writing throughout the webinar, but we'll also have time at the end for a Q&A session. Most of us are very familiar with Zoom at this point, but I did want to point you to the closed caption function. So if you look at your Zoom panel, there's a button that says CC. If you need closed captioning, you can click on that, and then the text that I say will appear on your screen as readable language as well. But with that, I will go ahead and jump right in. So as I mentioned, Caitlin and I both work for Green Energy Consumers Alliance. If you're not familiar with us, we are a nonprofit organization working to empower consumers and communities to speed a just transition to a zero carbon world. We've been around for over 40 years in both Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and we achieve our mission both through programs where we offer programs and services where people can learn about various clean energy technologies and then actually make the switch with our help. And we also do advocacy work for state level and local level policies in both Massachusetts and Rhode Island to make sure we've got the state programs and policies in place to actually meet our emissions reductions goals. So I will be giving the presentation today, but there are two other organizations in the background that we want to make sure everybody understands why we had all those logos on the first slide. So the state MOR-EV program, which is the electric car rebate program in Massachusetts, is housed in the Department of Energy Resources, or DOER. And that is the state agency that is responsible for policies and programs that have really anything to do with energy supply. So both the security, diversity, and cost effectiveness of that energy supply, but also the cleanliness of it in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, the resilience of it in terms of how we're going to adapt to the effects of climate change. And it is that state agency that houses the state MOR-EV program. The Center for Sustainable Energy, or CSE, is a national nonprofit, and they are the ones that actually administer the rebate program on behalf of DOER. So when you go to the MOR-EV website, or if you email MOR-EV staff, it's actually the Center for Sustainable Energy that you are engaging with. So we're working with the Center for Sustainable Energy to get the word out regarding the MOR-EV rebate, and all of that is under the auspices of the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources. So I will go in great detail through MOR-EV throughout this presentation, but just at a high level to start with, MOR-EV is the state rebate program in Massachusetts for electric vehicles. It is an acronym. It stands for Massachusetts Offers Rebates for Electric Vehicles. There are several different sub-programs that we will go through. There's a standard rebate for new vehicles. There's a rebate for used vehicles. There's an adder if you qualify based on your income. There's an additional rebate if you're trading in a very old polluting gas-powered car. And then there's a separate rebate for electric pickup trucks and other vehicles in that class. And for all of these rebates, we'll go through whether you can get them at the point of sale, right at the dealership when you're purchasing a vehicle, or if you have to apply after the fact. So we'll go through all of these one by one and go through the eligibility requirements both for you and the vehicle. First, though, we're going to do a quick electric vehicle 101 and a quick charging 101 just to make sure we're all on the same page on the basics of electric vehicles, because we often get questions about those. Then we'll do a deep dive into the MOR-EV rebate program. We'll go through every one of those subprograms, and then we'll talk about the federal tax credit, because that is an additional incentive that you can layer on top of the MOR-EV rebate to really substantially bring down the costs of an electric car. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So please do write any questions you have into the chat, and we'll go over them at the end. So starting right off with Electric Vehicles 101, we'll first talk about the different types of electric vehicles. So the first type is a battery electric vehicle, or a BEV or a BEV. These are vehicles that are only battery powered. So they've got a big old lithium ion battery that's usually the base of the vehicle. The range at this point for new vehicles is well over 200, if not 300 miles per charge. They take a couple hours to charge fully, but it depends on the level of charging that you're using, and we'll go over those. And there's tons of models that are battery electric vehicles, but some examples you might be familiar with are the Chevy Bolt, the Hyundai Kona, or the Ioniqs, the Nissan Leaf, all of the Teslas. Those are all pure battery electric vehicles. There are also vehicles that qualify as electric that are called fuel cell electric vehicles. These still use an electric motor, but instead of refueling the vehicle with electricity, you actually refuel it with hydrogen fuel. The benefits of fuel cell electric vehicles are that it takes a lot less time to refuel because you just need a couple minutes to refuel the tank. The drawback is that there are not very many hydrogen refueling stations. So on a convenience front, it's much easier to recharge a battery electric vehicle right now than a fuel cell electric vehicle. Some models you might have heard of are the Hyundai Nexo, the Toyota Mirai, and the Honda Clarity fuel cell. And these are all ones that qualify for the Massachusetts State Rebate Program. There's a third type of electric vehicle that I want to mention, but with a big caveat that these do not qualify for the state rebate program. So this type of vehicle is called a plug-in hybrid, or a PHEV. These are vehicles that have a lithium ion battery that you can charge up from an external source, but they also have a backup gas tank that can either actually move the vehicle forward or generate electricity to put into the vehicle battery. These tend to have a range of somewhere between 20 to 60 miles on electricity, and then a couple hundred miles on gas. And some examples are the Honda Clarity plug-in hybrid, the Toyota Prius Prime, or the RAV4 Prime. Some of you might remember the Chevy Volt with a V as in Victor that was popular a couple of years ago. These are all plug-in hybrids. Some of these models do qualify for the federal tax credit, which we'll talk about later, but they do not qualify for the MOR-EV rebate. So we just wanted to make that clear that MOR-EV is only for those battery electric vehicles and the fuel cell electric vehicles. Some of you may have attended one of our Electric Vehicle 101 presentations before, and in that presentation we go through the benefits of driving electric in a lot of detail. Today, the detail we will reserve for the actual rebate program, but we just wanted to mention real quick, the benefits of driving electric from a societal perspective are that they reduce or eliminate tailpipe emissions. Even if you take into account how the electricity is generated that we're putting into those batteries, they dramatically reduce air pollution, both in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and in terms of the type of pollution that harms human health. So from a societal perspective, electric vehicles are definitely a superior choice to gas-powered or fossil fuel-powered vehicles. From a driver perspective, there are also key benefits, and those are lower fuel costs and lower maintenance costs that I'll go over in a moment. The lower fuel costs really have to do with the vehicle efficiency. So electric vehicles are much more efficient than gas-powered cars. They waste a lot less of the energy. And an easy way to see that is in the graph on the right, where we're comparing the miles per gallon of popular gas-powered cars with the miles per gallon of electric vehicles. If you haven't heard of that MPGE term before, what that is a measure of how far that electric vehicle can go on the amount of energy that is stored in 1 gallon of gasoline. And that happens to be 33.7 kilowatt hours of electricity. And so if you compare MPG with MPGE, what that allows you to do is really see the difference on an apples to apples basis between gas-powered cars and electric cars. So looking at that graph on the right, Toyota Corolla, for example, gets around 35 miles per gallon. whereas a Hyundai Ioniq 6 gets 140 miles per gallon electric. So that is a way where you can see how much more efficient those gas-powered cars are, and that efficiency translates into lower costs per mile in terms of fuel costs, which, if you're interested in, we've got lots of information on our website to dive into that topic some more. On the left, I just want to point to the fact that the ranges of current electric vehicle models are much higher than most people think. A lot of people, when you think electric car, are still thinking of the early sort of Nissan Leafs that got 80 or 100 miles. At this point, the models that are coming out get well over 200, if not 300 miles per charge. So the range of the electric vehicle models today is definitely enough to meet most people's needs. I mentioned that maintenance costs are much lower for electric vehicles. If you want to dive deep into this, when I share the slides after this webinar, you can click on the link at the bottom for Consumer Reports. They did a study of several thousand gas-powered cars and equivalent electric vehicles in real life, real people's driving costs, and found that over the life of the vehicle, electric cars have about half the maintenance costs of gas-powered cars. And this graph, or this image from the Federal Department of Energy, illustrates that in a slightly different way. So what we're seeing here is a graph of the scheduled maintenance costs for different types of vehicles. So each one of these columns is a different type of vehicle. On the left, we've got internal combustion engine vehicles, or ICE vehicles. And we've got hybrid electric vehicles. These are the traditional hybrid vehicles that don't plug in. Then we've got plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, and the furthest on the right, we've got those battery electric vehicles. And you can see that as you move towards a more electrified vehicle, those scheduled maintenance costs go down. And there's a couple different reasons for that. One is there's a whole class of costs that just don't exist in battery electric vehicles. Those are those red costs at the very top of the columns. So battery electric vehicles don't have or don't need transmission service, spark plugs, oxygen sensors, or timing belts. So that's a whole class of costs you don't need to worry about if you're driving a battery electric vehicle. But then even within classes of costs that exist across the spectrum, the costs are less. So a great example of this is brake pads, which is the sort of dark brown slice of this column. When you're driving an electric vehicle, there's a technology called regenerative braking that basically uses magnets to slow you down when you need to slow down rather than relying on those brake pads. And so because you're using the friction brakes less frequently, the brake pads don't wear out as fast, so you have fewer costs replacing those brake pads over the life of the vehicle. So again, when we share these slides, you can dive into all of this in more detail, but the long story short, there's definite savings for electric vehicle drivers on the maintenance front. I'll now move to talk about charging real quick, and then we'll get into the details of the state rebate program. So quick refresher on the types of charging. There's 3 levels of charging. The first level is called level 1. It's also called a trickle charge because it's the slowest type of charging. And this is when you take a level 1 charging cable, which either comes automatically with the vehicle or you can purchase, and you just plug it into a normal 120 volt outlet, the same type of outlet you would plug a laptop or a cell phone into. This adds about 4 miles of range per hour spent charging, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you only drive 40 miles a day and are able to plug in at home and charge overnight, you can replenish what you've used in a day in 10 hours overnight. So a lot of people find this to be sufficient for charging at home. The next level up is called level 2 charging. It's significantly faster than level 1 charging. It can add anywhere between 15 and 30 something miles of range per hour spent charging. The speed really depends on which vehicle you're using and which charger you're using, but these are charging units that you can install at home. We've got a whole guide on how to do that if you're interested, but there are also lots of level 2 charging stations available in the public, and we'll show you shortly how to find them. But these all use a 240-volt outlet. So if you're installing one at home, this is the same type of outlet you might need for an all-electric dryer or a washing machine or something like that. The third level of charging is called DC fast charging. Some people call it level 3 charging. The DC stands for direct current, and this is absolutely the fastest type of charging you can do. This is the type of charging you might do if you're on a road trip and you're stopping at a rest plaza or need to add a whole bunch of miles in a relatively short amount of time. The range of how many miles you can add per half hour of charging is pretty wide because it depends on what vehicle you're driving and what charger you're using. But a lot of the modern vehicles now can add about 100 miles in half an hour. And this is the type of charging you would only do in public. You can't install one of these at home, but it's really there for you in those longer road trips. So there is a lot more public charging available out there than most people think. It's not like a gas station where it's got a big sign on the side of the highway so you know exactly where it is. These stations are built in places where people are already parked for some amount of time. So gyms and supermarkets and libraries and lots of other locations. We recommend a website or app called PlugShare. The link is at the bottom of the slide, but basically you can go to that website, type in any location, and it will show you what public charging stations are available around that location. So you can see where they are, how much they cost, what type of chargers they have. In these two screenshots, the green flags are for level 2 charging stations, and the orange ones are for DC fast charging stations. And this app is the type where the more you zoom in, the more of these things will pop up. So I definitely recommend, if you're thinking about an electric car, that you poke around PlugShare to see what's available near you and what's available in the places where you might want to drive. PlugShare also has a trip planning function, so you can see, okay, if I need to go from here to there, where would I charge along the way? So that concludes our very quick electric vehicle 101. We will now dive into all of the details of the MOR-EV rebate program. So this is the same slide I showed earlier that just reviews the different types of rebates under the MOR-EV banner. Again, they're only available for battery electric vehicles and fuel cell electric vehicles. They're not available for plug-in hybrids. And there are those several different sub-programs available, which we'll dive into now. This table is full of good information, but also a little busy, but we're just going to talk through it row by row by row. And then the following slides will talk about the specific eligibility requirements for each of these sort of sub-programs. So the first row is MOR-EV standard. This is the rebate for new light-duty vehicles. The amount is $3,500. It's available for the purchase or lease of eligible new battery electric or fuel cell electric vehicles. And it's available for Massachusetts residents, businesses, and nonprofit organizations. The rebate is available both at the point of sale and post-purchase. When I say it's available at the point of sale, I mean that if you go to one of the dealerships that's listed on the MOR-EV website as participating in this program, then you can get that cost reduction right at the point where you're paying for the vehicle, rather than waiting to get reimbursed after the fact. But it is still available post-purchase. If you purchase from a dealership that's not part of the program, or just forget when you're at the dealership, you can go to the MOR-EV website after the fact, fill out a form, and get a check in the mail for that $3,500. The next program, or the next line here, is MOR-EV used. This is for used light-duty vehicles. The amount is also $3,500, and it's still available for the purchase or lease of battery electric or fuel cell electric vehicles. There is a requirement based on your income, so you need to meet some income eligibility requirements to qualify, and we'll go over what those are shortly. But this one is also available both at the point of sale and post-purchase. If you want to go the point of sale route, you have to get pre-qualified on the MOR-EV website, and we'll go over how to do that. Then we've got two rows for basically adders. So for, excuse me, the third row is what I meant. MOR-EV Plus is an adder that can increase the amount of rebate you're eligible for based on your income. So if you meet the eligibility requirements that we'll go over, you can add $1,500 to either the MOR-EV standard or the MOR-EV used rebate. And this rebate is also available both at the point of sale or post-purchase. If you want to go the point of sale route, you do need to get pre-qualified. Then we've got MOR-EV trucks, which is the rebate program for trucks. For individuals, the only relevant one really is the $7,500 rebate for the purchase or lease of battery electric or fuel cell pickup trucks. There's some language here about the GVWR, the gross vehicle weight rating, but basically it amounts to, if you're looking at a pickup truck, it's $7,500, and there's a list on the MOR-EV website of exactly which vehicles qualify. This is also available to businesses, nonprofits, educational institutions, and local municipal and state government. This one is not available at the point of sale. It's just available post-purchase. And then this presentation is really geared towards individuals who are looking for vehicles, but we did want to mention that MOR-EV Trucks also has rebates for Class 3 through Class 8 vehicles. So anything from a transit van to a cement truck, basically, there are rebates available, and the rebate amount depends on the vehicle class. These rebates are available to businesses, nonprofits, educational institutions, and all levels of government. But we won't go through this in great detail because today we're really focused on the light duty vehicle side. So in these slides, we will go over the eligibility requirements for each of those programs, starting with MOR-EV Standard. So to get this rebate, you just need to be a Massachusetts resident or a business or nonprofit located in Massachusetts. The vehicle must be a new battery electric vehicle or fuel cell electric vehicle. The MSRP, or the manufacturer's suggested retail price, must be under $55,000, and the vehicle itself must be on the eligible vehicles list, which is available at the MOR-EV website. And you have to either purchase the vehicle or lease it for at least 36 months to be eligible. For MOR-EV used, the requirements are slightly different. So on the applicant side, you have to be a Massachusetts resident. This is not available to businesses or nonprofits. And then you need to prove either that you participate in one of a long list of income qualifying programs that I'll show in just a moment, or demonstrate that your modified adjusted gross income, or AGI, is under these limits. So the limit is $150,000 for those filing jointly, $112,500 for heads of households, and $75,000 for all other filers. A side note, these are the same income limits as the federal tax credit for used vehicles. But again, you just have to prove to the state MOR-EV program that you meet one of those requirements. In terms of the vehicle requirements, it has to be a used battery electric vehicle or fuel cell electric vehicle. The model year must be at least 2 years earlier than the calendar year that it's purchased or leased in. The purchase price has to be under $40,000, and the vehicle cannot have received the MOR-EV rebate in the last 3 years. In terms of program eligibility, again, you either have to purchase or lease for at least 36 months. And to claim this rebate at the point of sale, you must be pre-approved, and we'll go over that process in a moment. Moving from those sort of base rebates of MOR-EV Standard or MOR-EV Used, we'll now talk about MOR-EV Plus, which again adds $1,500 to the rebate that you can claim. In terms of applicant eligibility, you have to be a Massachusetts resident, or you have to participate in one of a list of income qualifying programs. On the next slide, we'll talk about even more of these programs, but some familiar ones might be SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or LIHEAP, the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. But there's a whole long list that you can meet. One thing I want to make really clear is that for MOR-EV Plus, you have to participate in one of these income qualifying programs. If you don't participate in one of these programs, you are not eligible. But for MOR-EV used, if you don't participate in one of those programs, but you do have an adjusted gross income under a limit, you do qualify. So that's a very slight distinction in the eligibility rules between MOR-EV used and MOR-EV plus. And again, if you want to claim the rebate at the point of sale, then you have to be pre-approved. I will pause on this slide for just a moment. These are all of the other programs that would make you eligible for MOR-EV used and MOR-EV plus. Again, we'll share these slides after the webinar, and this list is also on the MOR-EV website, but as you can see, there's a whole long list of possible ways to qualify for MOR-EV used and MOR-EV plus. Now we're moving on to MOR-EV truck. So again, this is for pickup trucks, really. To be eligible, you either need to be a Massachusetts resident or a business, nonprofit, educational institution, or local municipal or state government. This rebate is available for new battery electric or fuel cell pickup trucks. And again, there's language about the gross vehicle weight rating, but really it just amounts to pickup trucks. And the MSRP limit for this is slightly higher because those trucks are more expensive. So instead of the $55,000 for MOR-EV standard or the $40,000 for MOR-EV used, the limit here is $80,000 for MOR-EV truck. And then in terms of program requirements, you have to retain ownership of the vehicle for at least 36 months, or if you're leasing, lease for at least 36 months. And then if you are an individual applicant, you may also be eligible for MOR-EV plus. But if you are a business, nonprofit, educational institution, or government, you do not qualify for MOR-EV plus. And then finally, we have MOR-EV trade-in. So this is the additional $1,000 that you may be eligible for if you're trading in an old gas-powered car at the same time that you're purchasing a new or used electric vehicle. So MOR-EV trade-in is available only to Massachusetts residents who are trading in a qualifying internal combustion engine vehicle at the same time as purchasing or leasing an EV. In terms of vehicle eligibility, there's a long list here. The vehicle must, or you must provide a vehicle inspection report from the Massachusetts Vehicle Check. The vehicle has to be an internal combustion engine, not including hybrid vehicles or plug-in hybrid vehicles. So the intention here is to really target the oldest, most polluting vehicles on the road. The vehicle has to be at least 12 years old. It has to have a market value. It must be a light-duty vehicle. It must be traded in at a licensed Massachusetts dealership, and it has to have been within your family's use for at least the 2 years prior to the trade-in date. So this is basically preventing you from going out and buying an old clunker on Craigslist and then trading it in. It has to actually be a vehicle that you've been driving and are taking off the road. And then in terms of program requirements, you apply online for this. You have to submit the required documentation within 90 days of purchasing or leasing an eligible new vehicle. And you apply after you've already received the MOR-EV rebate at the point of sale, or after you've applied online for MOR-EV standard, MOR-EV used, and or MOR-EV plus. So if you get the MOR-EV rebate at the point of sale, you have to wait for that application to really be processed before you can also apply for MOR-EV trade-in. But all of this is information that's available on the MOR-EV website as well. So I know that was a lot, so we're gonna move right along here to the pre-qualification process for MOR-EV used and MOR-EV plus. So the good news is that this is all online. If you go to the MOR-EV website at more-ev.org, you can create an account, and that will lead you through the process. For MOR-EV plus, you need to fill out this pre-qualification form before you purchase or lease a vehicle. You can demonstrate that you qualify by indicating which income qualifying program you participate in and uploading documentation of that, or uploading a copy of your driver's license. And then you can prove that way that you qualify for MOR-EV Plus. For MOR-EV Used, the process is very, very similar, with the addition that you can prove that you qualify by uploading a copy of your tax transcript to confirm eligibility based on your adjusted gross income, instead of proving that you participate in one of those income qualifying programs. But once you get to the MOR-EV website and say what you're applying for, it makes it very clear what it is that you need to submit to get pre-qualified for either MOR-EV Used or MOR-EV Plus or both. So that concludes our run through of the MOR-EV rebate program. We're now going to turn to the federal clean vehicle tax credits, because these can be stacked right on top of the MOR-EV rebate, but they work slightly differently. So before I launch into this, I have to read this slide that says says very clearly that we are not tax professionals. We're not giving accounting advice. The information that we're providing here is purely for educational purposes. So with that caveat, I'll move right along. So the federal clean vehicle tax credit was instituted by the Inflation Reduction Act, and it creates both a new and a used clean vehicle tax credit. So we'll talk about those separately because they have slightly different requirements. For the new electric vehicle tax credit, the amount is up to $7,500 on eligible models. And that eligibility is determined by a list of battery and assembly requirements that we'll go over in a minute. The tax credit is valid through 2032 for battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles and fuel cell electric vehicles. The credit can be claimed at the point of sale or when filing for your taxes. Either way, you have to purchase from a dealership that has registered with the IRS's Clean Energy Portal. And you, the purchaser, need to meet some income requirements. So your income needs to be under $300,000 for joint filers, under $225,000 for heads of household, and under $150,000 for individual filers. I mentioned that there are complicated rules that determine which vehicles are eligible. We will go over them here because people are curious about this, but I want to really stress that you do not need to memorize these. You can just find a list, and we'll show you how, of which vehicles are eligible and go from there. But if you're wondering why some vehicles are eligible and others aren't, there are 3 sets of requirements, and all 3 need to be met for the vehicle to be eligible. So the first is that the vehicle's final assembly requirement has to be in North America. So that's the United States, Canada, or Mexico. You can check this yourself with the vehicle identification number using the link that we've hyperlinked here, but it's much easier to just go through the dealership and let them tell you which vehicles qualify. There is an MSRP price cap. So for SUVs, vans, and pickup trucks, that is $80,000. For sedans and hatchbacks, it's $55,000. And then there are 2 sets of very complicated mineral and battery component requirements, where if the vehicle meets both of those requirements, it qualifies for $7,500. If it meets one but not the other, it's $3,750. And if it doesn't meet either of those requirements, then it's $0. So again, these are the components to figuring out whether an electric vehicle qualifies or not. But as a potential buyer, I would say just look at the list of eligible vehicles. Don't worry about these details in the background. When the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, it created this clean vehicle tax credit for individuals, but it also created a commercial vehicle tax credit that does not have the same complicated eligibility requirements as the one for individuals. What that means is that dealers, or basically leasing agents, can claim that commercial vehicle tax credit when they acquire vehicles from manufacturers to lease. And many are choosing to pass the value of that tax credit on to consumers in the form of either lower monthly payments or lower upfront costs. So if you're looking at electric vehicles online, you might see a lot of them are being advertised with a $7,500 lease rebate. That's basically the federal tax credit being passed on to consumers. So if you're looking at a vehicle that doesn't qualify for the clean vehicle tax credit, it might be worth considering leasing just to capture that incentive value. Moving on to used vehicles, there is now a federal tax credit for used electric cars. We've linked to a list of the manufacturers and models that qualify. The good news, at least, is that the complicated battery requirements that we just talked about don't apply for used vehicles. So it's a much simpler process to figure out if a vehicle qualifies or not for the used tax credit. The amount is $4,000 or 30% of the sales price, whichever is lower. You have to buy from a dealership, so you can't just buy a used car from a friend. And the vehicle has to be at least 2 years old and cost less than $25,000. I'll note here that that limit is different from the limit for the Massachusetts rebate. So for the federal tax credit, it has to cost less than $25,000. For the state used rebate, it has to cost less than $40,000. And then there's a lower income threshold. So again, that threshold is $150,000 for joint filers, $112,500 for heads of household, and $75,000 for single filers. So how do you actually go about claiming this tax credit? You've got a couple choices. So you can choose to transfer the tax credit liability from yourself to an IRS registered dealership, or you can choose to claim the federal tax credit yourself when you're filing taxes. If you choose to transfer that tax credit liability to the dealership, you can choose to apply the value to the down payment of your car or towards the cost of an EV, or you can just receive cash. If you take it at the time of sale, your personal tax liability no longer matters because you're using the dealership's tax liability. But if you take it when you file your taxes, then you can only claim up to your federal tax liability. We've created a checklist if you're thinking about getting an EV to make sure you're doing all the things you need to get that federal tax credit. The first thing that you need to do is that you want to confirm that your expected income for the year is under the required limit. And again, those limits are different for new and used vehicles. If you think your income is going to be under that limit, then you want to make sure that the dealership or store that you're working with has registered with the IRS Energy Credits online portal. The best way to do this is to just ask a salesperson, or better yet, a general manager, and just have them confirm that yes, they are registered. Then when you're actually looking at a particular car, you want to ask the salesperson to confirm via the Energy Credits online portal that the vehicle qualifies for the federal tax credit. And then when you actually go ahead and purchase that vehicle, you want to make sure that you receive two documents. One is the time of sale report that the dealer submits in that Energy Credits online portal. And two is just a copy of the confirmation from the IRS that that submission went through successfully. You're going to need both of those pieces of paper for Form 8936, which you have to file during tax season. You have to do this even if you don't normally file for federal taxes, and even if you got the credit at the point of sale, you still need to fill out this form, and you'll need that time of sale report to do that. All of this is also written on our website. I know this is a long checklist to remember, but it's all written out for you so you can go into a dealership prepared. I mentioned a couple times that we have a resource that can help you figure out which vehicles qualify for which incentives. So this is available at greenenergyconsumers.org/drivegreen. We've got this for both new and pre-owned vehicles where you can learn about different models. You can learn about their range, how fast they charge, what the base costs are, what the different trims are, and you can see which ones qualify for the federal tax credit and or the state rebate. So you can figure out based on what kind of vehicle you're looking for and what your budget is, which models you should be considering. And so that is a resource that sort of combines what's available on the MOR-EV website with what's available on the IRS website all into one place. And again, I'll send out the link to this resource in the follow-up email after the webinar. But then finally, to sort of pull this all together, I want to give an example of how this works in real life with a real vehicle. So when I looked online this week, I found a 2021 Chevy Bolt battery electric vehicle with 45,000 miles available at a dealership in the greater Boston area. The price is $17,660. The federal tax credit for this vehicle would be $4,000. The MOR-EV used rebate, assuming you meet the requirements for it, is $3,500. And so if you add those together, that brings the final price down to about $10,000. If you also qualify for MOR-EV Plus, which is $1,500, you can bring that down to $8,660. And if you also have an old gas-powered car that you're trading in, you can qualify for that additional $1,000, which will bring it down to $7,660. So this is just an example of how if you can stack all those incentives, you can really quite substantially bring down the cost of a used vehicle or a new vehicle to something that's much more affordable for more people. I'll turn to questions shortly, but I wanted to say that if you'd like to come see us in the real world, we're going to be at 2 events this weekend in different parts of the state. So on Saturday, we will be in Pittsfield with a community organization called Westside Legends. They have an annual soapbox derby, which is going to be a lot of fun, but we're going to have a little electric vehicle showcase as part of that event. And the starting arch will actually be inflated using one of the electric vehicles rather than a diesel generator. So we're really excited about that. And then on Sunday, we will be in Quincy, Massachusetts at the annual August Moon Festival put on by our partners at Quincy Asian Resources Inc. or Quarry. This is the 3rd time we'll be at this event. It's a huge cultural festival. It takes over an entire street, Coddington Street by the Y or the high school. And there's lots of food and music and fun, but we'll also have an EV showcase and more information about the MOR-EV rebates. So we hope you can join us there. And with that, I will turn over to questions. And I see that there's been a fair number in the chat. So let's see. So, okay. Someone is asking if you sell an ICE vehicle, so an internal combustion engine vehicle privately, and then lease an electric vehicle from another dealer, can you get the trade-in rebate? That is actually an excellent question that I don't know the answer to, and I will find out for you. My understanding is that it's much easier if you're trading in the vehicle where you are also purchasing or leasing a new vehicle. But we will double check the eligibility requirements of that program and get back to you on that question. Let's see. There was a question on where to obtain that pre-qualification voucher for MOR-EV. The answer is the MOR-EV website. So if you go to MOR-EV.org, you can create an account and apply for that pre-qualification voucher. That's something you want to do before you go out and purchase or lease a vehicle. And then there was a question about, is there a list of vehicles that qualify for the federal and or state incentives? Yes. Looks like Caitlin put the link in the chat. So thank you for that, Caitlin. There's a question about how long you have to lease a new vehicle to qualify for MOR-EV. The answer is 36 months, which most leases are 36 months. Very occasionally, some people lease for 24 months, but the minimum is 36 months to qualify for MOR-EV. And then we've got a couple other sort of more technical questions on electric vehicles themselves, which I'm happy to answer because we're here. So there's one question about the different plug types. So when we were talking about DC fast charging, what we didn't go over in this presentation, but do go over when we do deeper dives into electric vehicles themselves, is that there are different plug types for DC fast charging. And the question is, if you have one type, can you use the other type? Are there adapters? So what I will say is that we are in a somewhat unique place right now in that all of the major manufacturers are slowly converging on one standard for charging, which is called the North American Charging Standard, which is basically the Tesla charger. So every major auto manufacturer has said that when they start putting out vehicles next year, those are going to have that NACS standard charging plug. In the meantime, manufacturers are slowly working on getting out adapters so that if you use a vehicle that has a CHAdeMO plug or a CCS plug, which are the other two standards, that you'll be able to use a North American Charging Standard charging unit. So far, I think it's really only Ford and Rivian drivers that have received those adapters. And I would say definitely if you currently drive an electric vehicle, wait for the adapter provided by or approved by your vehicle's manufacturer. There are some third-party adapters out there, but they might void your warranty if you use them. So definitely go. Unfortunately, this means waiting a little bit, but wait for the adapter from your manufacturer so that you know that the adapter you're using is safe and works for the vehicle. I think we've answered all the questions, unless I missed any, but I will say again, thank you very much for joining us today. We will send out a recording and the slides shortly, as well as lots of the links that Caitlin put in the chat. So thank you all for joining and have a wonderful rest of your day.